So there's 14 kinds of suffering at least. There's Adamic suffering. That's our father Adam. He sinned against God. As a result, everyone and everything is just kind of broken. Everyone and everything is just kind of broken. In addition, there's demonic suffering. Sometimes Satan and demons, and there is an unseen, unholy, unhelpful realm, just attacks you, and you didn't do anything. You're really a victim of demonic attack. There's a man named Job in the Bible. It says he was a righteous man, and Satan just declared war on him, not because of anything he had done, but because of his love for God. That's demonic suffering. Victim suffering. Sometimes you are not guilty. You didn't do anything. You just got attacked. Sexual assault victim, thievery, business partner steals from you, spouse runs off and commits adultery, something catastrophic. You didn't cause it or create it or perhaps even contribute to it. You're just a victim of injustice and evil. There's also collective suffering. This is where you're part of a group of people and they're all suffering, so you're feeling your suffering and their suffering. Today we would call that America. Amen? Any of you feeling this? Right now, everybody's kind of in a hard season, and we're all feeling it together, which raises the suffering level. There's also disciplinary suffering. The Bible says that God is a father, and just like a good parent corrects a child, it's to prevent greater future harm. So if you see your kid doing something that is ultimately going to harm them or endanger them, you discipline them to correct them. Well, God is a father, and he disciplines us to save us from greater harm. It's an act of love. There's also persecution suffering. We'll get into this more specifically next week as we conclude 1 Peter 4. But this is where you love Jesus, and they don't, and as a result, they're going to treat you the way they treated him. This is really out of your love for Jesus. In addition, there's empathetic suffering, and this is that someone that you love, care for very dearly, is really having a hard season and they're going through it, and so you're sharing in their grief. The Bible says to weep with those who weep. That's what empathetic suffering would be. How many of you right now, there's somebody you know, you love, and they're really going through it, and you're going through it with them because you care for them. And what makes it even harder in our day is we can't even physically be together to comfort those that are suffering and we care for. Life is so complicated and isolated right now that it multiplies empathetic suffering. There's also testimonial suffering where what you're going through is really hard, but God has a great testimony for you on the other side. That you're going to use this to talk about the goodness and glory of God, and people will pay attention because of all that you've endured. We saw this not long ago on the news. There was someone that had a family member that was murdered tragically, and it was a horrible situation. And the mother, I think it was, got on the news and she said, what happened was wrong and evil, but Jesus Christ is a God who forgives, and he has forgiven me, therefore I forgive them. That's testimonial. What happened was horrible, but she used it as a witness to her love for Jesus and his love for her. Providential suffering is where God is working out and orchestrating a lot of details in your life towards some greater cause or good in the end. This is the story of a man in the Bible named Joseph. He goes through a cataclysmic series of betrayals and complexities, and then in the end, it was all to get him in another country during a famine so that he could save many, many lives, and God had a great story planned for him, and he just needed to keep going until he got to the happy ending. Mysterious suffering, category 11. You're like, I don't know why. How many of you, this is what you've experienced? Somebody comes to you, you're like, okay, why did this happen? You're like, I have no idea. The Bible says we see in part, we know in part. There's certain days you're like, Lord, I love you, and I don't know what's going on. I just don't know. There will be things that we don't know until we see Jesus, and then he lets us know. That's the mystery. There's also punishment suffering. This is where you do something bad, and as a result, there's a consequence. You commit a crime, you get arrested. You drink too much, you blow out your liver. You yell at your wife, you sleep on the couch. It's just cause-effect. This is the way that it works. And if you slept on the couch last night, now you know why, okay? There's also consequential suffering. This is where we're not entirely victims, but the decisions that we make contribute to the pain that we experience. What's happening right now, many of us are dealing with consequential suffering. I was overextended on my mortgage, and then the bottom fell out. I really spent some money I shouldn't have spent, racked up my credit card or college or car debt, and then I lost my job. I really didn't watch my health, and now I'm in a high-risk category. This is consequences for decisions that we make over time. And then lastly, there's apocalyptic suffering, and what this means is history moves toward its conclusion, and the second coming of Jesus Christ, things get worse. This is the opposite of evolution, by the way. And if you still hold to evolution, you're adorable. How many people think it's getting better? Anybody think it's getting better? You're like, it's going so well. I can hardly wait for the future. The election, I'm so excited. And so what happens is, apocalyptic means the closer we get to the end, the more Satan and demons declare war, the harder and darker it gets until Jesus comes to fix the mess we've made.